Are you looking for wisdom, courage, and guidance on your journey as a changemaker? Grab your headphones, a warm drink, and possibly a notebook. You're going to want to take notes. You've found your new favorite podcast. Welcome to Become a Good Ancestor, a podcast hosted by Layla Saad. Layla is a New York Times and Sunday Times best-selling author, an international speaker, and a globally respected teacher on the topics of race, identity, leadership, personal transformation, and social change. In each episode, Layla interviews some of the world's most inspiring authors of color who are changing the world with their words. From memoirs to manifestos, poetry to pop culture, science to social justice, and everything in between. Join Layla as she dives deep with BIPOC authors who are showing us the way to healing and liberation. This is a place for people who want to help change the world, in honor of those who have come before us, and in service to those who will come after we are gone.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Become a Good Ancestor podcast. I'm your host, Layla Saad, and this is the place where inner work meets social change. Today, I'm speaking with Buddhist meditation teacher and writer, Kate Johnson. Kate's work integrates embodiment, justice, and the practice of wise relationships. Kate has taught meditation and creative movement practices as social change methodologies for almost 2 decades in public schools, community health centers, activist organizations, and performance collectives. And she's been a dedicated practitioner in the Western Insight Theravada Buddhist tradition since 2008 and was fully empowered as an independent Dharma teacher through Spirit Rock Meditation Center's 4-year teacher training in 2020. Her debut book that we'll be talking about today is called Radical Friendship: 7 Ways to Love Yourself and Find Your People in an Unjust World. It's published by Shambhala, and it's our July book club selection. Drawing on her experiences as a leading meditation teacher, as well as her own personal stories of growing up multiracial in a racist world, Kate Johnson brings a fresh take on time-honored wisdom to help us connect more authentically with ourselves, with our friends and family, and within our communities. To find out more about the book and to join us for the discussions in the book club, visit becomegoodancestor.com/book club. All right. Welcome, Kate.
Hi. It's so good to be with you.
It's so good to have you here. We've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time, and I can't wait to dive in because I've never read a book on friendship. So this is going to be a first for me. But before we dive into the conversation, can you tell people where they can find your work online?
Oh, sure. Thank you for asking. Folks can find me at my website, katejohnson.com. I'm on Instagram at hello Kate Johnson, I believe.
Uh-huh.
I'm not on Instagram much, but when I am, I'm there. And then, I can be full. You can find me, you can find my schedule on my website. There, I teach often online and kind of around the country at various retreat centers.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Okay, so our very first question that we ask every guest: who are some of the ancestors, living or transitioned, familial or societal, who have influenced you on your journey?
I love this question. I love being able to call in some of them at the beginning of a conversation. So one that immediately comes to mind is my great-grandmother, Theodosia Ueda Nelson. She raised my dad, and she was a Baptist officially, but also pretty magical. And he was raised in an island off the coast of Honduras where there was a lot of influence of indigenous, North American, Caribbean, and African diasporic religion. And so I feel like her tendency towards interdisciplinarity and not fragmentation, but wholeness, even with a spiritual practice that integrated multiplicity. I feel like that's part of her legacy and her gift to me. I think
love that.
about, yeah, she was a force. I think about Deepa Ma, who is one of the ancestors of my Buddhist training. She was a teacher of several of my teachers, and I never met her in person, but she was by all accounts like a pretty enlightened person. I mean, she was able to like walk through walls and stuff like that. But she also was like, just exuded love and was able to really transmit that quality of total unconditional acceptance to the students she was around. And she was one of those people, because she had such incredible powers, could have had a community around her where she just sat and offered teachings all day. But she was a dedicated mother. She had a daughter and then became a grandmother. And she decided to stay in the city, and she taught other mothers in her neighborhood to meditate to the point of enlightenment. She would teach young mothers how to meditate while they were breastfeeding their kids. And as a new mom and as just like a total community person, like I know that my path is certainly a householder path. Her model of kind of everyday enlightenment and of finding the sacred in daily life is something that I really look to as a support and as motivation. That awakening isn't somewhere else; it can be just here in my everyday life.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Can I have two more?
Yeah, you can have as many as you want, please.
I want to populate the space with these people that I love.
Bring them in. Let's call them in.
One other person from my my tradition, who's more of like a Western insight tradition teacher, but one of the first generation of teachers here. His name was Eric Kolvig, and he started the LGBTQ affinity group meditation retreats that happen at these large centers around the country, where I sometimes teach, and really was a champion for making space for queer folks to come and sit together and practice together, and what it is to have a affinity space where folks who are usually at the margins can be centered, and how much easier it can be to relax into ourselves in spiritual practice when we're not more or less worried about encountering microaggressions. Because I think he understood that when we come to the cushion, some of what we come to heal from is patriarchy, is white supremacy, is, heterosexism and transphobia. And so he comes to mind because I got the opportunity to sit with him a couple of years ago, and he was talking about his own friendship practice. And well, let me back up. Someone asked him how he practices now, because he's elder, and he was remarking that he can't sit in meditation as long as he used to, and his mind is starting to change, losing memory and things of that nature. And he said that the way that he practices his spiritual practice now is to treat every being that he encounters, be it a human being, a child, a rock, to treat every being as his own personal friend when he meets them, and to allow his face to light up when he sees them, and to extend his heart to them. And I just think it's such a beautiful, intention, and one that can help us practice love all day long. So I definitely
it has me smiling from ear to ear, just saying that. Can you imagine, me up from
this
within.
elder gentleman walking down the street, hello, friend the rock, hello, friend the dog, hello, friend the tree. So definitely want to bring him into this space. And then last, I have to name Bell Hooks, who recently transitioned, who was a Black feminist and a Buddhist, and just who I've always wanted to be when I grew up. I feel like reading her work taught me how to write, and taught me how to think, and taught me how to love.
Yeah. I love that. I'm actually in a program at the minute on it's by the School of Radical Healing, which is led by Adria Moses, and we're going to be studying Bell Hooks' book All About Love as part of this trauma-informed training for BIPOC facilitators. So I love that you named her, because I've been wanting to read the book for a really long time, but it was like I need to be in the right place to read this like really important body of work, and it feels like the right environment for doing that. So I love that you've brought her in, because she's sitting in my heart right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I love that. All right. That's wonderful. And in the book, you do share, all of the different teachers that have influenced you and that, are part of your lineage, whether like DNA lineage or philosophical. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your upbringing. So what you would consider your cultural background, the influences around as you were growing up, around like what were the themes that formed your values, right? And how you show up in the world, and then how you came into the world of Buddhism and meditation.
Okay. Well, I'm from Chicago originally. I grew up in Chicago in the 80s. I have a white American mother who's from Missouri, from a town that's literally called Boonville. I don't know if you know this, but in the States, we like kind of pejoratively refer to the like small towns in the country as the boonies, or that's what we did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Literally called Boonville.
Okay.
And a very small town where white and Black people literally lived on the opposite sides of the train tracks that ran through the town. Her ancestry is French, and actually we recently discovered Ashkenazi Jewish.
Wow.
And then my father is from, as I mentioned, Honduras, from an island off the coast of Honduras called Roatan. He's Black and Afro-Latino. And they met in Chicago, in the early 80s. And that's where I was born. I grew up in a city that was and still is deeply segregated racially. I lived in a primarily Latinx neighborhood, and I would say, race was a concern for kids at that age. It really dictated who you hung out with, where you went to school, what kinds of music you liked, and I don't think I was the only, I couldn't have been the only mixed kid in Chicago, but it really felt that way.
Right.
And so I think, aware at that time, I would say my experience was one of not belonging, not feeling like I belonged anywhere, or really searching for where it was that I belonged, and really longing for a space where I felt like I could be myself and all of me was included.
Yeah.
And having a hard time finding that, I think now I know that that's, regardless of racial and ethnic background, how pretty much everybody feels when they grow up.
Right.
I think
the
that
universal experience of it. Right.
Not belonging, searching for where we fit in, and to try to connect, and to be in a relationships where we're seen the way we feel inside. I think it's part of the human condition. But I feel like because of the circumstances of my birth, because of the site of my birth, I had like an extra dose of human condition in the early years. Super conditioned.
Super human, right.
So, I started becoming interested in Buddha Dharma, but really all spiritual traditions pretty early on. There was I don't know if I wrote about this or not, or what got cut, but there was a encyclopedia of world religions in my basement. My parents had tons of books, and I used to go down there and just look at the images even before I could read the very small print that would tell me about what the traditions were. And I was particularly drawn to Tibetan Buddhist iconography. I ended up, pretty sure, shoplifting the Tibetan book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Trungpa Rinpoche. It was like a Songyal Rinpoche when I was
not shoplifting that book.
No. Well, I hadn't read the book yet, so I didn't know about that precept of not stealing. And anyway, I would read it in my closet, like literally when I was, about 11, 12 years old. And I resonated with the core teaching and the language around understanding suffering as a path to freedom. And it felt so refreshing to me to see someone acknowledging that there's a lot of suffering in this realm,
Yeah.
and in a home life and in a culture where it felt like, particularly for children, people were asking you to just kind of put a smiley face on it and keep it moving and not ask too many questions about why things were the way they were, in the family, but also in society. I mean, this was the Reagan
Yeah.
years, kind of the height of,
Right.
we thought it the height at the time, right, of,
Yeah.
societal injustice and individualism. And I have such a respect for the intelligence of children, now. And I think I had a lot of questions that maybe made adults uncomfortable. And so I think I found a refuge. I wouldn't have been able to articulate that at the time or to, call it that. But there was something deeply healing for me just in the acknowledgement that, hey, there's a lot of discomfort in this earthly realm that we live in, and also that freedom is possible, and that it's an inside job, that it doesn't necessarily require all outside circumstances to be exactly as we want them to be. But there's a way to be free inside, regardless of conditions. And that inside freedom can help us work for greater freedom in the world. And I feel like that I held on to that,
Yeah. Yeah. But Buddhism and, Buddhist teachings are a huge, obviously, part of your life and sewn into the book, right? Like they are the foundation of the book. And when I think I first saw your book, I think scrolling on Instagram, the algorithm just throws stuff up.
Yeah.
And I saw the title, you know how it is. I saw the title and it was like my nervous system just like, just relaxed. It was like, it felt like I'd been carrying something that I didn't even know I had been carrying. And then I saw that title, Radical Friendship, and my whole nervous system just took a weight off and just relaxed. And I think it's because some part of me recognized that that was something I wanted for myself, as well as something that I truly believe the world needs in order for it to be the world that we want it to be, a liberatory world, a world of equity, a world of radical love. And so immediately I was like, save. I think I saved the image, come back to this later. But the next thought that came to me after the huge sigh of relief was how do we do this, right? So I would like you to tell us a little bit about what is this book about and how did you come to write it? And you shared this in the intro, the story of how you came to write this book. So set our audience up if they haven't heard about Radical Friendship before.
Yeah, sure. So I'm so happy that the title had that impact on you. I think that's really what my deep intention was, is like, how can this book actually be a friend to people and communities that I care about and that I'm a part of. The book, okay, so the book is structured around a classical Buddhist text called the Metta Sutta. And there was something that felt good to me about just being unapologetically Buddhist in this book. I think that, there were some questions in the kind of development process around like, oh, could this be a potentially more secular book? Would that help it to be more accessible to folks? I think that, who knows, maybe. But certainly and having this strong backbone of this ancient text and the many, many modern applications of those teachings in a world that I think probably would not even be imaginable during the Buddhist time was just so like interesting and life-giving to me. Something about knowing that this is a tool that has deep roots and being explicit about those roots. And the teaching itself is a description of the qualities of what the Buddha called a Kalyanamitta, or spiritual friend. And I think that the word spiritual here, I translated it as radical friendship because I think that to apply those teachings in our modern day context is a radical act, because it's really saying is that we're engaging in a relationship where we're committed to showing up for our own and each other's liberation. That it's not just about hanging out. It's not just about taking cute pictures. I mean, that you should do all those things too. You should get your nails done together. You should, take a
All of
spa
that good
day.
stuff.
And, you can also be in a relationship in a way that, in a friendship in a way that, kind of creates this mini enlightened society, like between the two of you, that we can actually kind of embody some of our deepest hopes for the world just in this microcosm of our relationship. And that this can be a relationship of, two or more people that can accompany each other on the path to liberation, our own, freedom, where we're healing from, the impacts of societal oppression, childhood trauma, who knows what else, where we're becoming free internally. And then when we're also working for freedom and justice in the world. And the text offers 7 characteristics of a spiritual friend, as Kalyanamita. The Buddha said that the spiritual friend is one who gives what is hard to give, does what is hard to do, endures what is hard to endure. That the spiritual friend is someone to whom we can tell our secrets. I'm sorry, the spiritual friend is someone who tells you their secrets and who keeps your secrets. That when misfortune strikes, the friend won't abandon you. And when you're down and out, the friend won't look down on you. And so the Buddha basically said, these are the 7 qualities that you should aim for, that when you see someone with these qualities, you should connect with them and, stay together. And that these are the qualities of someone who's capable and someone who's developing this practice of enlightened relationship or wise relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about the process of how did this come to be a book?
Yeah.
And by the way, I had to read that passage several times. So what you just read out to us is these are the 7 spiritual qualities. I had to read it several times because I was like, this is so simple. It's timeless wisdom, and it's very hard.
Yeah. Totally. It's not like, okay, got it, next problem. It's like, it could be a lifetime practice for sure.
Absolutely. But I appreciated the simplicity of it. I think it was easy things to remember, and it just rang true. Each statement rang true, that when you're down and out, they don't abandon you. Yeah. They give what is hard to give. Those statements just felt very, very true. So I'm glad that you stuck with it being explicitly Buddhist, explicitly in this tradition.
Thank you.
Tell us how it came to be a book.
Well, I gave a talk at a Buddhist conference, almost 10 years ago. That was, I had come under fire the previous year for having the tagline for the conference was something like the new face of American Buddhism or something like that. And it was almost entirely white men who were presenting at the conference. It was a conference that is no longer happening, but at the time focused on the intersection of Buddhism and technology and neuroscience. And the communities of color who practice Buddhism, both like the heritage Buddhist communities of Asian American Buddhists, and also the many, BIPOC Buddhist communities, were not pleased, not to see ourselves represented there, although not surprised. And so the organizers, to their credit, the following year made a significant effort to invite other folks. And I was one of them. And it was early on in my teaching life, although I had been practicing for some time. And I gave a talk that was really, I think, took the idea of technology really loosely and just said, hey, mindfulness is a technology. It's a spiritual technology that we can actually apply to wake up to the implicit biases in ourselves, and to wake up to the ways that we have replicated cultural norms within our Buddhist communities that actually nobody wants, that are only replicating the societal structures that we've been trying to become liberated from. And that and that's a real good thing to do with our practice, right? It was kind of like a call to action to this group of, predominantly white male meditators. Like, hey, don't just use the meditation as a way to become calmer or to become more focused at work or to pursue this path of individual enlightenment, but that path of individual enlightenment doesn't actually exist. And that we can't expect to heal our anxiety when the world around us is struggling so profoundly, and that the path to calm is actually through compassionate action. So that was like, it was kind of this like, let's do it, y'all. Let's use our practice in this wider way. And it was podcasted and then picked up by an editor at a publishing house who just got in touch and asked if I would like to write a book about the talk. And I knew that you're supposed to say yes, so you get invited to write a book. And that was like a really just such an honor. And also, I didn't feel like I had a whole lot more to say about this issue of how we use mindfulness to wake up to implicit bias. Like I kind of taken that as far as I personally could, as someone who's not a neuroscientist, who doesn't really know the kind of intricate details of like how perception moves into thought and action, and what that pathway is like. And plus I knew a couple other people who were writing something about it. Like I knew Rhonda McGee, who's an incredible meditation teacher, also anti-racist meditation teacher, was writing the book in her work of racial justice. And I thought that might be, I was like, she could actually write that book a little better than me. But what I could write about was this relational piece around like why would even anyone want to do that work? Because it is so slow and can be so unsettling, to come face to face with the way in which each of us may be caught, may have internalized messaging or beliefs from our environment that we didn't intend to incorporate, that suddenly we hear a voice in our head and we're like, who the hell said that? Like, that's not what I believe. And to slowly, bring those into awareness in such a way that they can be transformed, and also be acknowledging the ways that which we've made mistakes. It's like that work is hard. That work is, can be painful. Like, why would anyone want to do that work? And then when I was looking around at the work that I was doing at the time, which was mostly in meditation and yoga communities, helping organize those communities in service of social justice movements kind of within New York City, I thought, I think friendship would be reason enough for someone to try to do this work. And I saw that people who were coming to meditation spaces and who also coming to movement spaces, part of it was that they wanted, to find more peace and calm. They wanted to, in terms of movement work, to be a part of something that, was a catalyst for change in the world. But people were also coming because they wanted better friends. They wanted to connect with other people who cared about the same things they did. And we were working with a model of change that included kind of personal work, relational work, and systemic work as these kind of three pillars of what is really needed to make social change happen. And I feel like we had a lot of material around, okay, how do I work with my mind? We had a lot of material around what's the societal theory of change. And there wasn't a lot supporting this relational piece.
Yes. Right.
So it was, and recognizing that need, and for me too, recognizing that longing within myself, like, a big part of why I'm here is because I want to connect and I want to love and be loved and I want to feel safe and belong. And so it was exhilarating actually to realize that within the spiritual tradition that I was already teaching in, there were these like time-honored teachings about how to relate with one another, how to be good to one another, how to be kind, even when it's difficult, how to show up, how to be generous, and that elevated that kind of relational practice to the level of the practice we do when we're just on the cushion with our eyes closed, watching our breath, that one, they're not separate, and two, it's not lesser. And that wasn't the vibe that I got when I came into meditation centers. You know, I would come in and I would see no one was talking to each other. Everyone was facing forward. People had their eyes closed, you know, and, you know, the class hadn't started yet, but no one was chit-chatting or asking how your day was. You know, it was just a very like individual.
Right. I've just come to get my own personal enlightenment.
Yeah. And then I go and
right?
I plug in and I fill up and then I get up and I go back into my life and I don't even tell anybody that I'm meditating. And, you know, I do it. So it was really, I felt like this opportunity to reclaim something that is actually part of the tradition that I think got a little bit lost in translation when Asian Buddhist cultures were, you know, quote unquote, translated by predominantly white teachers in the West.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's such an important point because culturally, you know, where the practice is originating from, you know, those indigenous practices, those ancestral practices and the ways of being in community with each other and being in society with each other look very different to white supremacy culture, right?
Totally.
And so when we interpret something that is giving enlightenment, but it's through the lens of a culture where there's hierarchy, there's supremacy, there's, you know, capitalism, there's all that kind of stuff. It's going to be interpreted in a certain way. And like you said, something gets lost in the translation. And that's why you end up with situations like the conference that you talked about, you know, where it's like, how are you not seeing the disconnect here between what this is about and how it's being interpreted here? That's such a key point. I want to say as well that I think your book is such a perfect companion for anyone doing or reading Me and White Supremacy for a number of reasons. I think firstly, because, you know, I started into the work of anti-racism also writing. So you spoke at a conference. For me, it was I wrote an article that went viral, and I was speaking to spiritual white women and saying, how is it that you have these practices that you do, you know, from these cultures that you're appropriating from essentially, but you have this deep connection with these mindfulness practices and these transformation practices, these change-making practices, but you're not translating them into social change, right? And the work of Me and White Supremacy, when you said, you thought, why would anyone want to do this? I mean, I pretty much say that at the beginning of Me and White Supremacy. I'm like, it's hard and nobody's going to reward you for it. You know what I mean? It has to be on your own volition. And this is why I ground my work in this philosophy of good ancestorship, because I think if there is a higher principle or a principle that transcends our individual, you know, gripes and pains and complaints, and, you know, there's something bigger that we're living for, then that can be the impetus to push us forward and to keep us going, especially when times get really hard. So I see these as really great companion pieces. And I know that a lot of people are coming through Me and White Supremacy because they're looking to be in the practice of allyship, which I think is another word for this spiritual radical friendship that you're talking about.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love thinking of our books as like companions.
Yeah.
And gosh, I appreciate the work that you've done, and also like, you know, the wrestling with this figure of allyship and how can it be more than just kind of this strategic kind of showing up.
That's
like,
right.
how can it actually be a depth experience that feels satisfying? Not only
can we speak on this? Let's speak on this. Yes.
But like, I not that performative. I mean, performative allyship is certainly better than you know, outright harm. You know, like
although sometimes performative allyship can be indirect harm as well, right?
That's
like
right.
if we saviorism can be super harmful, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's right. And yeah, like how can it be something that's like true relationship and deeply satisfying for everyone involved?
Yes.
And yeah, it's something I'm learning about too. I mean, I think I primarily focused on race and racism in the book, at least at first, because I can't talk about everything at the same time. Like, although I struggle with that, you know, the nature, like it's like wanting to really capture this, you know, perspective on intersectionality and finding that it was only, able to kind of talk about the parts of identity one at a time. But yeah, I am learning about it a lot too, in the ways in which I experience privilege in this world and basically get, an easier time just by function of certain ways I was born or raised, like being light skinned and mixed race, being able bodied, being thin, and cisgendered. Like, I think another reason why I wanted to write the book is I needed like a book length piece of paper to be able to write out what I feel like is the spiritual practice of holding in our awareness both the ways that we are privileged and the ways that we've been oppressed by society, and learning how to be in right relationship with other people who also have their own constellation of privileges and oppressions.
Yes.
And that's that is a mindfulness practice, and it is one that takes kind attention and a lot of love, and that the opportunity there is that we get to wake up to the ways in which we're no longer free, not free yet. And I think that can only happen in the rub of relationship.
Yeah. And you say at the outset of the book, you say that I have it word for word. You say, this is a book about finding your freedom, finding your people, and the possibility that these are actually two parts of one and the same spiritual path. And you were saying earlier about, we have the personal work, we have the systemic work, and then in the middle is this communal relationship work. And that's oftentimes, I think it's work that we avoid, because the personal, that's just me and me. That's just between me and me. And I can do that in my time, and nobody has to see that, really, right?
Yeah.
I can do that in my journal. I can do that in my therapy sessions. You know what I mean? It's like, that's about me. The systemic, it is about changing the systems, but we often don't think of systems and institutions as individual people. We think of them as things, right? But the work of like one-on-one relationships, or one with a group of people, or one with a community, where there is both the deep desire to belong and then also the deep fear of rejection. Right? And it's like, I want it, but I don't, I want it, but it's risky, but I want it, but I need it, but it's hard. And what if things go wrong? What if what happened with that relationship in the past happens again in this one? And what if I give my trust and it's abused, and all of those things, which are so hard. But that middle piece is the human piece. That I think that's what makes us human, is our relationships with other people. But we really want to avoid it. And you say that when you first heard that passage that had these 7 practices, you said, I instantly knew 3 things when I heard it. 1, I wanted to be that kind of friend. 2, I wanted to have that kind of friend. And 3, nothing in my experience or education had adequately prepared me for either of these things.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, this is training that we don't even know that we need, like how to be a friend, how to have a friend.
For real. I saw on social media the other day, there was this really hilarious meme that was like, it was like a person smiling on a beach, and it was like, another day without using sine, cosine, or tan. All these, we did learn a lot in school, but I didn't learn this. And yeah, I mean, that's a whole other conversation about, education and, what it's, don't get me started, what's actually preparing us for. But I do think, I mean, it's good to be an adult. It's good to be able to like take the reins on my own education now. And I think, I love what you said about our relationships are what make us human. And it's what it is to be human is something I think about a lot lately, especially as we enter into like a really different era in technology, a really different era in economy, and one in which people, even before the pandemic, the World Health Organization was talking about they called it a loneliness pandemic, or an epidemic of loneliness. And I think that's what capitalism, one of the first things we lose in capitalism is our relationships with other people, because they become transactional.
Right.
And because there's a way in which corporations and companies and businesses really benefit from us feeling isolated and separate and alone. And then they can sell us a material thing that they say will solve our problem.
That's right.
And so it's like kind of getting back to what we know to be true, that humanness is priceless, that it's part of our purpose here and it's worth the risk. And that it is important for us to have some kind of like lifeline or tether or compass to navigate relationships, because they are messy and people do get hurt. And, I've been hurt in relationship. I'm sure I've harmed other people. I know that I have. And so like part of what I love about this particular Buddhist teaching is how practical it is, and how, like it gave me something to hold on to when I was navigating relationships. Like while I was working on the book, it's funny when you're working on a book like this, because for me,
it brings up stuff, right?
Oh my gosh. I was writing about friendship and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have any friends. I was like, I don't have any friends. I'm a terrible friend. Not true, but it's just like, it's to be in deep contemplation. I will say it is my practice. It is not something that I perfected. Friendship is my practice.
Dear good ancestors, let's take a short break for a minute. Are you enjoying this episode? Then you should join our book club. The Become a Good Ancestor book club is a place for book-loving changemakers. We are a community of engaged people from around the world who are passionate about social justice, creativity, leadership, healing, liberation, and of course, books. Each month on Patreon, we read and discuss the book from the current month's episode. And at the end of the month, we host an exclusive Q&A event with the author themselves. Our past books and authors include the New York Times bestseller, The Prophets, by Robert Jones Jr., Motherhood, on the Choices of Being a Woman, by Dr. Pragya Agrawal, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev, by Donnie Walton, named a Best Book of 2021 by Barack Obama, and See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love, by renowned civil rights leader Valerie Carr. The internet can often be a loud and overwhelming place. There's a lot of information out there, but not always a lot of depth. When you join our book club, you'll become a member of a thoughtful and hopeful corner of the internet. To learn more, click the link in the show notes or visit becomegoodancestor.com/book club. We can't wait to see you there.
I just wanted to say as well that the book is deeply practical. So you have a number of, practices that are part of like mindfulness practices and these friendship practices, but then you also weave like your own experiences and your own stories and your own trying and fumbling and stumbling and continuing through that process, right?
Yeah.
And there was one that you identified. You said, on a good day, I know that the pace of real friendships that challenge hierarchy and connect us with what's really important in life, is always slower than we think. All people have their own rhythm, and if we listen well, we can hear it. And then you say, one activity of radical friendship is attuning to the cadence of our beloved others and shifting our own rhythm to move with theirs. Now, I read this and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then I looked at the chapter name and it was Giving What Is Hard to Give. And I was like, oh, okay. Yes, that is hard for me to give, and maybe that's a space in which I'm being invited to give what is hard to give. But I love that. It felt like such a simple invitation, but really, really powerful. So I want to ask you, if there were like 3 practices that you would suggest to people who are wanting to cultivate this practice of radical friendship and they were starting brand new, like what are 3 practices that 3 simple practices that you might encourage them to practice?
I would say one would be to I know we just said like meditation is not enough. And one practice that I would encourage would be some kind of mindfulness of body, if that's possible, or mindfulness of breath practice where, you'd spend time, a few minutes a day, just paying attention to your own body and the sensations in your body as they come and go. Some people find that working with the breath is really calming and being able to connect with the sensations of the breath as the inhale happens and the exhale happens, and to, as much as possible, attend to the changing sensations and the physical experience with the eyes of love, with non-judgmental awareness, really treating our own body as a friend. As a friend that has never given up on us, that is always trying to do its best to be healthy, to show up, that, and that one of the ways that we can show love to ourselves is by just paying attention, that the body actually, this is what one of my teachers taught me, that the body actually receives our attention as a form of love. And while meditation alone isn't enough to, dismantle the prison industrial complex or, reform, election politics or, any of the things that really need changing in our world. It can be an incredible template for how to show up for other people and other people who are also changing, other people who are, imperfect and also beautiful and holy. And to be able to regard ourselves with that kind of tenderness, I think is an incredible daily training. I would say they're all kind of like rushing in at the same time.
Yeah. And of course, all of them.
Yeah, all of them. But, there's a practice around equanimity that I think is really helpful. Again, this is kind of an individual practice where, the invitation of equanimity which is a heart quality in Buddhism, is to kind of amplify the heart of love that is connected to wisdom, and that is capable of both loving and letting go at the same time. So there's in the book, I bring up equanimity, I think in the chapter that's around working with de-identifying even with the identity of the good ally or the good friend, understanding that.
Or the good ancestor. Yep.
Wow. Yeah. That's one I'm going to have to work on letting go of. I was like, this is it. I'm like, she's got it. That's the higher calling. But yeah, that like, that even, good allies make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so, to be able to, like, in a moment when we make a mistake, or we are, what will often happen when we sit down in meditation is like, for a while we're sitting there, we're connecting with our breath, and then it's like the flood of memory and of regret and of, wishing that things had been otherwise. And so when we notice, either in a moment where we've, put our foot in our mouth or, made some kind of relational blunder or even a serious harm, and or when we're on the cushion and we remember something, to be able to check in with the contemplation of the times in our lives where we've caused harm, and also the times in our lives when we've really been able to show up for others. And to hold them both at the same time, so that we know that even when we make a mistake, we are not a mistake, but that there's something good about us and something that's still worthy, that deserves care, even when we've unintentionally hurt someone else.
I love that.
And then a third practice. Okay, this one isn't in the book, but it's something that I've been thinking about since I wrote the book, especially because so much of my learning happened through making mistakes and through kind of screwing up and learning more about it. I think at one time my editor was like, so did you have any friendships that like worked out, or like, was this all you just like messing up and like figuring stuff out? Like, no, I have some of these people are still my friends.
This is just a book on what not to do. That's all.
I think, you know, a lot of folks, especially in the neuroscience community, have talked about the ways in which our minds tend to default to noticing the things that are like
that are wrong, that are off, or
things that are just not quite there yet, and that particularly for people who are working on like you know, spiritual development, who are working on being good ancestors, who are working on being good allies, there can be this like relentless kind of like, oh, I'm not there yet. Oh, there, I missed the mark there. You know, I think noticing moments when we're in relationship with someone and we feel that sense of like true connection, intimacy, true friendship, to be able to not miss those moments, but to actually know them when we're having them and soak in the pleasure of being connected to someone in a way that's not hierarchical, that's not transactional, that's like truly, I want you to be free and I can tell you want me to be free, and we're going to be honest with each other, and we're going to be generous with each other, and we're going to be patient with one another. And those moments come and go within relationships, you know, like even one that we will say like, this is my deep spiritual friend. There are going to be times where we're misaligned, but in the moments where we are aligned, in the moments we are experiencing the kind of intimacy, which, you know, in the Zen tradition, they talk about intimacy as a form of awakening, you know, and that when we have those moments of liberation with one another, not to miss them, but to cherish them, to let ourselves register, oh, this is what freedom can feel like, so that we know it when we see it, and we start to gather more of those experiences around us and orient towards those kinds of relationships.
I love that. We have a practice in the in our for Team Good Ancestor, so on our Slack headquarters. So every Friday we do Friday celebrations, and this is for us to individually share, you know, what are we celebrating about ourselves, that whatever we survived this week or thrived and achieved or learned or, you know, came to a realization of, and championing ourselves. So being that friend to ourselves, and then being that friend to each other by celebrating and acknowledging each other. And I think it's so important, because you're right. We do tend to focus on where we haven't arrived yet or what's not quite right yet. And especially as people who experience marginalization, we're so attuned to that because it comes from, this is going to help me stay safe, right? And so we use a lot of willpower and a lot of strength and a lot of resilience to achieve a lot of stuff, to survive a lot of stuff. And we don't give ourselves credit for that. But we become very attuned to where I don't fit in, or where I haven't got to yet. And it's so important to do that. I love that you shared these. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. And thanks for like naming that, oh, that kind of perfectionism in relationship is itself an expression of white supremacy culture, you know?
Yes,
and that like, how can we dismantle that by like, I love that, taking time to celebrate what's working, what's right. Like, where have we grown?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, on that note, I want to bring in a member of Team Good Ancestor now. I'm going to ask Rima Zaman, who's our book club facilitator, to join us, because she's going to be leading discussions about your wonderful book in our book club throughout the month of July. And this is a book that is very book clubbable. I feel like it's a book clubbable book for sure. And I know Rima's going to really enjoy holding space for those discussions. So welcome, Rima.
Thank you, Layla. Hi, Kate. I've loved reading your book and going through all of the exercises and practices. Thank you for writing it. It is it's a wild romp of a book. It's a wild joy to read it. And it's so very humbling and challenging. And you write with such a beautiful melodic voice, but you're shaking me the entire time. It's an amazing dichotomy. This last, and it's, you know, it's a real testament to how books come into our lives exactly when we need them most. This last year and a half, I grew up in a Buddhist community. I grew up in Thailand from the ages 6 to 18. And so Buddhism, whenever people have asked me, like, you know, are you spiritual? Do you align with any kind of practice. I've always said Buddhism. And in this last year and a half, all the things that I'd be able to practice so easily were really challenged because of a particular character in my life that came into my life in the last year and a half. And the best way to describe it is they are a collaborator in the life I have always wanted. And therefore, I don't want to reject them, because to reject them would be to reject this beautiful life I have worked so hard to arrive at. And so all of our Buddhist practices were really, really tested for me. And when I read the title Radical Friendship, immediately my brain said loving kindness, right? And radical acceptance of self and the other. And I've, going through your book has just reaffirmed for me that the most challenging people in our lives is because they trigger so many of the things we value and identify with. And then it's, my continual practice is, what is the gift? What is the gift in this trigger? What are they showing me or revealing to me? And like, that's how I'm trying to, navigate my way through. And what is the opportunity for deeper compassion? This is an opportunity for deeper empathy, because it's very easy to be empathetic toward all human beings when I'm sitting in the safety of my controlled environment, right? When I get to control all, like, the entire cast of characters in my life, then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sitting on a lotus leaf, I have so much love. And then when you don't get to control your cast of characters, that's when we're really tested. And you mentioned, your book is it's one of those seamless books where you're like, oh, it's written and it reads in such an effortless way that I know it took so much effort to create that seamlessness. Because both Layla and I are authors as well. So we know anything that appears seamless required so much work to arrive at that melodic gate. And you mentioned early on in the book, in the introduction actually, that the first draft of the book tended to center whiteness, and it required heavy revision to get to the final draft. And my first question for you is, in what other ways did the first draft change into the final manifestation?
Yeah. You caught that. Yeah. Well, thank you for your thoughtful read, and for drawing so many connections to what's been happening in your own life in the last couple of years. And I think, I had never written a book before. This is my first one, and I've always loved writing. And it was something that kind of, that I didn't center in my life much until, I was kind of asked to write this book. And I learned to write in predominantly white schools, to a predominantly white group of teachers who needed a certain amount of explanation, and I think the word was coming up again, translation of the ideas that I had and the context that I was coming from, in order to make it legible for them. And they required that as a part of what good writing was. And so I think that was part of it, like learning to write for, and being taught to write by white teachers who said that good writing was one that, writing that, that centered white cultural experience and understanding.
Right.
And I think part of it too is the internalization of those voices, where, I joke about it now, but when I was writing, I really felt like I had these two, people will talk about the inner critic. I feel like I had like two full-on critic committees, in my office. And one of them was this kind of white academic Buddhist mafia who I was worried would just go through the book and say that I didn't translated something right or interpreted a sutta wrong and discredit the entire thing, saying like it wasn't correct, it wasn't perfect, so therefore it didn't matter, it was trash. And I feel like that's a fear that kind of comes with me that I'm still working on healing. This worry that like people won't think I'm smart, or they won't think that my ideas matter. And feeling that I had to kind of prove that. And so when I was writing with a awareness of that critic committee, my writing took on a really academic tone that was much more removed than what I really wanted to achieve. Like I wanted the book to be like the voice of a friend. And when I started writing with that committee in mind, it sounded like a dissertation. It sounded like it was almost writing defensively, as if I was trying to prove a point, rather than coming to the page with the confidence that the people that I'm writing for actually already know what I'm talking about. And I'm reminding them of things that they already know, that will just comfort them to hear and put in a different way. So that was one kind of, dismantling that happened in the process of writing. And the other side, I think, was also, was like it's kind of like a social justice mafia voice of like, the cycle of publishing is so long, as both of you know, as authors, right? So between the time I actually, the ink dries on the page and the time it gets actually put into the world can be like a year and a half. And my fear was, okay, right now friendship is cool, but what if by the time my book is published, friendship is canceled and we're not talking about that anymore and we're talking about something else, And it was partially the perfectionism and partially, this feeling like I needed to perform a certain amount of radicality in order to satisfy and like be the, fiery young, Black Buddhist teacher of color that is like a expectation. And that some parts of the book weren't quite so fiery and fierce, and I think there was something in that too that was healing, that allowing myself to be soft, allowing myself to be a gentle person, allowing myself to be like true to my own personality and experience, and take myself seriously, even if take myself seriously in a way that I didn't always have to be like a super serious writer, but I could just be authentic to what felt like me. And I think over the course of writing the book, what started to happen is I could hear when those two voices would come in. And it was almost like when you hear a sound that's like a little bit sharp, like in a piece of music, and it's like kind of grates on you and you're like, oh, that's not right. I would hear it when those voices started to come in, and I would be like, oh, gotta stop, gotta take a walk, gotta call a friend, gotta take a bath, gotta read it, and then come back to the page, and I could hear when it was me again. And that me voice started to get stronger as the book went on. But yeah, I probably wrote 4 books in the process of getting this one together. It just took time.
Thank you. I love that you gave yourself, that you stopped asking for permission, which is what wanting to argue a thesis, that was initially performing almost for permission to own the page. And you instead just claimed the page. And in the process of that, it's almost like you gave yourself permission to be earnest. Right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the most, I found, very soothing and therefore healing parts. The aspects of the book, of your writing, of your voice. I find that when I read a voice that is poetic, that in and of itself is both healing and empowering. And that is your voice.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel seen.
Thank you.
And it feels great.
Thank you. Thank you for writing it. And you kind of already touched on this, but I want to know, what was the most challenging aspect to writing, and what was the most freeing or most joyful?
Most challenging. So I think I touched on the most challenging part of the process, which was like learning that I couldn't actually write from a place of feeling defensive or feeling like I had something to prove, and to really learn that in the process, like for me, I had to just take a break at that moment and reconnect with myself, do something that helped build resilience, and rest, hang out with someone that I love,
Yeah.
to be willing to pause and to know that that actually went faster than me sitting and trying to like duke it out, with the critics in my head. I think another challenge came in just around the all of the reflection and life review that happened around my relationships with the writing of the book. I really feel like the book, that this teaching continued to be a teacher for me and continues to be a teacher for me and a big part of my practice. And I wanted to write about friendship because it's something I've struggled with, it's something I've, longed for and struggled with. And I think that the commitment to working with this text and working with this, this teaching over the couple of years that I was writing it really called me to center relationship in a world that doesn't reward that, the reward was really intrinsic. And I think that actually leads to the joy of it, is like, oh, I learned to really make time for my relationships, and to not have them be kind of a side dish to the main course of my life, but actually like that invest in them as something that is part of what makes life meaningful. Even to the point of just like scheduling out on my Google Calendar, just friend time, not for a specific friend, but just anyone who shows up that day and calls, or like anyone that I feel is on my mind and I want to call, it gave me permission to really let that be, a centerpiece of my life. And,
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's made my life just more rich and vivid and beautiful.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love your questions, Rima.
Thank you, Layla. I love listening to you now, like wind us through this beautiful conversation. And yeah, my final question for you, which I think you already answered, Kate, was how did writing this book inform or impact or change you or inspire you in your journey? And I think you just shared what it was, and I think a true testament of the power of a book is that it changes us in the very way we hope it will influence or impact or move a reader. And that even though we go into a book thinking we're the expert of the thing we're going to write about, it ends up humbling us and taking us to a deeper place, which is exactly what you shared.
For real. Yeah. I mean, and I love that you brought up metta like earlier on in our conversation, because, that metta, loving kindness, is like, it's a cultivation practice, right? Where we like cultivate this heart of love that is boundless, that is able to, in the text, they say it's the heart of love that rains down equally on all beings. Like it doesn't discriminate, between this, that, and the other. It's, I want everyone to be free. And I understand it comes from this deep understanding of interdependence. It's also a purification practice, right? So sometimes when we're intending to generate love to ourselves and other beings, what comes up is the ways we don't love ourselves, or the bits of like self-hatred, self-sabotage, and I feel like this book it was a purification for me, and I hear that for some people reading it, there can be a little bit of that element of like reading the book and feeling like, I mean, I even had some friends who said like, I feel judged just by the title. I mean, I'm glad that wasn't the impact for each of you, but to like, the question comes up, oh my gosh, am I a radical friend? Am I radical enough of a friend? And, I think, my highest wish is that if there is any, small bit of challenge, in the reading of the text, around like contemplation of our own relationships and where we've really grown, but also where we struggle, that will be, it's not just challenge for challenge's sake, but it's challenge of the nature of purification, right? Where it draws out everything that's not love so that it can be released. And that there's kind of no way out. there's no way to do that other than to kind of like let it come up. But when the regret comes up, or when the shame comes up, or when the longing comes up, that we can actually notice it and establish a new relationship that'll move us towards the kind of relationships that we want with others in our lives. I think I think that's possible with this particular kind of teaching.
Definitely. Because what you're saying is it helps us differentiate between love and fear. And something I've been really working on is recognizing that so often when I feel rage, rage is the grieving of a broken expectation. And so to understand that in that moment, I can choose love or fear. And my fear is driving that rage, thinking that this incident or this person is a direct threat to my happiness. And then to just really sit with that and ask myself, is that true or is that fear? Right?
Mm.
And to choose love every time, as hard as it is.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. That was such a wonderful conversation to listen to. And I know that Rima is going to be holding, incredible questions like that for discussion in the book club. And Rima will be holding space for a fireside chat with Kate at the end of the month as well. So I hope that people will join us for that in the book club. Kate, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I really hope people go out and buy this book. This is a book for anyone who's wanting to cultivate a radical relationship, a friendship with themselves, with other people, whether friends, whether family members. Even I think it can even transcend, maybe people that we see as distant from us, or we see as so different from us as well. But it's an incredible, incredible book. So I want to wrap up this conversation by asking our final question. What does it mean to you to become a good ancestor?
It's actually something I've been thinking a little bit about lately, I think having a kid has made me kind of understand my own legacy and what I'm leaving behind a little differently. It doesn't always take that for other people to think about that, but for me, that's what it took. I think being a good ancestor, when I think about what I hope to be as an ancestor, I think about continuing to be in relationship with the living. I think about that with my own ancestors now. Like, how can I, even the ones that I didn't get to meet, be in relationship with them? How can I think about them? How can I ask them for help? How can I, when I am in meditation and paying attention to my own body, feel that they're right here with me, even in the DNA of my cells, right? And to not forget about them, but let them be a part of my day as I move through the day. To invite them to rest with me, to invite them to play with me, to hang out with friends with me, so just awareness of them. And part of that reason why I want that is because I feel like we really need their help now, that we're at this kind of inflection point in our collective life where we need all the help we can get. And the benevolence of the elevated ancestors is one that a power that I think we can really call on to help us stay buoyant in our hearts and hopefully to move things in a good direction in the world. And so when I think about being a good ancestor, I want to be in relationship still. I want to be the kind of ancestor that my friends and loved ones and descendants, biological and otherwise, can look to for support. And I want to be able to support the people who will inherit this earth from us in whatever way I can, with whatever words I leave behind, but also with whatever love and power that I can access on the other side.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kate. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to cherish this conversation for a long time.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed learning about today's author and their incredible work. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave us some love with a rating and review. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And of course, don't forget to buy the book we talked about today. We're on a mission to center and celebrate BIPOC authors, and you can help us do that by sharing this episode and the book. You can join us in our book club to dive deeper into today's book. Visit becomegoodancestor.com/book club to find out more. For more inspiration and learning, you can find us at becomegoodancestor.com. and become_a_good_ancestor on Instagram. Thank you for being on the journey with us as we strive to become good ancestors, in honor of those who have come before us and in service to those who will come after we are gone.